yo. July 23, 2024. What's up, Sam? We got like it's Tuesday, dude, and I think it feels like a month of news, bro. I can't sleep at night. I'm waking up 3, 4, 5 times a night. I sent you a message at like midnight. Hey, man, if something fucking blows up in the middle of the night, wake me up and let's go live. Because this thing is, I am so convinced in the next 7 days there's going to be an event. Like,
Yeah.
it's amazing, dude.
Well, and you saw Jimmy Carter died.
Yeah.
So just like thing after thing after thing, it's incredible. I forget who said it, but someone said, there's decades where nothing happens, and then there's days where, centuries happen or something of the sort. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
It's 100% what we're living in. And then you and I got an insane week. We're flying to Nashville tomorrow, and then we're just going to be boom, boom, meeting. Which I'm very excited for. I mean, I love being busy. It pumps me up. And so just the energy, I think, of being there, just the energy of everything going on right now. Like, it's very chaotic. It's very dangerous. But for me, it's like really gets me motivated.
Yeah. No, I think we're living in exciting times. It's a little too much, actually. I mean, I think it was you. I was complaining this weekend. I'm like, man, it's just, it's nonstop. And it's like somebody made the comment, it could have been you. And they said, hey, we are living through history right now.
Yeah.
And, I was kind of complaining about it. And then I was like, oh, wow. We really are living through history. And it does feel like a lot, but it's, it's happening on our watch, man. It's just really staggering. Like we have a front row seat to this.
Yeah. Yeah. I always think about other periods in history. I'm like, what would it have been like to live through, the Civil War here, or World War I, World War II, the French Revolution? I'm like,
hot, sweaty, smelly, painful.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm pretty sure that almost even if you were a king 100 years ago, most people have a better life than most kings did 100 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, that's absolutely true. Especially, can you imagine being in Florida?
Yeah. But dude, the news, we have what? We have in the last week, we've had Biden say he's going to run. Then he can't even be found anywhere. Kamala is now running. We don't really know where Joe Biden is. There's rumors they're using AI tools on some of his recordings. We have the Prime Minister of Israel landed in America last night, and they're arguing about who's going to meet with him. We have a head of state showed up, and we can't even get our shit together. He's probably going to fly down to Mar-a-Lago and meet with Trump. Wouldn't that be hilarious? Yeah. We have an Ethereum ETF that was launched today. We have Fidelity coming out saying, this BTC thing's bigger than anybody thinks. We've got Jimmy Carter dying, as you said. We have, dude, I just like.
Head of Secret Service resigned.
Service quit today. She should have quit a week ago. She literally, we had a mini Warren Commission yesterday, and dude, these people ripped this lady into pieces. They got her to admit that this was a colossal failure, and it could have been prevented. Just staggering, dude. Like, I cannot believe we're in America.
And one of the keys that was mentioned multiple times is the only reason she showed up is because they subpoenaed her. So they kept asking, the only reason they had to force the head of Secret Service to show up. Otherwise, she was not going to show up. What does that tell you?
Yeah, totally. By the way, people in the audience saying your camera looks a lot better.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Queen. So where do you want to start? We're going to have Chris Inks on here in soon and probably talk more about trading. But here would be my question. All these events, here's my question for you, Gary. All these events happening, what does that make your outlook on the market feel like? Because one thing I've heard from you and multiple other people is, hey man, I'm not making any big decisions until after the election. And I don't know if that's normal. I don't know if previous elections have been like that, where investors all over are going, you know what? Like, we don't care how the economy looks. We're going to wait until after November.
Yeah. I think with Bitcoin, I will say that it puts me in a very unique position. I think for Bitcoiner, I'm pretty comfortable holding Bitcoin with or without a Donald Trump win. I don't really think the idiots that are in control right now, one, they don't even care about Bitcoin. Okay, they're not even thinking about Bitcoin. It's not in their window of interest. It's not on the. Hey, Chris, good to have you, buddy.
What's going on,
It's
guys?
not. It's not in their like it, dude. It's. I guarantee you, it's not one of the top 15 items on their list. So, the existing administration isn't even considering it. It's my understanding they have been invited to the Bitcoin conference. They probably won't go. They got too much. Quite frankly, they shouldn't go. They have too much other things to do. So I'm really comfortable. I would keep I'm adding here. Okay. So I will add here at 66, 67, 70. And to me, that investment in Bitcoin is going to be as safe with Trump as it will be with whoever is going to run on the Democratic side. There's nothing the Dems can do to hurt this. There's nothing a psychopath can do to hurt Bitcoin at this point. I don't even think they can slow it down. So to me, I've never been in a position with a presidential election with this much drama that I have an investment vehicle that I don't even have to worry about who's going to win or not. Now, I can't say the same about the S&P 500 or the Qs or any of the legacy market. What I'm quite certain of is that whoever is president of the United States in November has a very large problem to solve, okay, on so many different levels. And to have an amateur in there and not to have a global negotiator that no one understands what his real position is and doesn't know, what he will push or pull. I think that's absolutely the right person and the right cabinet that we have. And we need a bunch of 37, 35, 40-year-old career business political types that can navigate the country through a fucking eye on the needle, dude. I mean, like this job is so almost Superman difficult. So like we need to get out of our own way and pick the best guy that can hopefully navigate us through what looks like a very tiny window to me. And we're probably going to lose an arm and a leg just doing it. So it's not going to be easy. And I think we need to pull together and quit fighting so much because there's just so much at risk here. For Americans, I think there's a massive amount at risk. And for the world, quite frankly. So, but my investment on Bitcoin, I don't, it'd be interesting to see what Chris says, especially if you have a 2 to 8 year window. I don't see Bitcoin getting hurt through this. In fact, everything that's happening right now is very positive for Bitcoin. It should be positive for silver and gold. Silver and gold were built for this, man. Were built for this type of volatility. The VIX, the volatility index is supposed to represent the insanity on our planet, and it never does. It's trading between 10 and 14, just like everything's cool. I see Chris laughing, but I mean, like, we have major shit going on all over the world, dude. And that's before you start talking about the hundreds of minor issues we have. Minors meaning rioting in Paris, rioting in Germany, rioting at colleges. I mean, there's just a lot of chaos. And I'm not trying to be negative. I think that we have to confront. I got hammered yesterday for being negative. But quite frankly, I don't remember a time that was this violent. Do you, Chris, remember a time that was this violent and this unpredictable?
Not that if I think back, paying attention to things. But, again, I kind of bring up that point that, is it really that much crazier? I mean, significantly that much crazier like it feels like than it's ever been? Or does it just feel like it because we have this constant information, at our fingertips, constantly bombarded with us? We're always on social media, especially, like you and me and others that are here that are often on X, which, is coming to really be the leader as far as, instant information from people. And so, I kind of step back and I sit there and I go, okay, well, is it really as crazy and as obscene as it seems right now compared to previous times? Or is it just that we're stuck in that information, that constant information coming in, which makes it feel like that? And the thing about that is, even if it is that latter, even if it just is, maybe things aren't quite as crazy as it feels like compared to, previous times. But if we feel like it is, that's the real thing, right? That's the issue. That's the problem. Because how we feel about things, how we perceive things, kind of leads to how we respond and how we react and the things we're going through, right? We can look at people, generally speaking, especially over the last 20 years, depression becoming a much bigger issue than it ever was. Feelings of estrangement from other people, lack of community, lack of connection. I mean, Gary, you're like me, man. We've been around way before, this technological age. We're used to seeing people face to face. I still prefer it today. I like to shake somebody's hand. I like to look them in the eye, in person. But a lot of these folks growing up today, they're growing up in this completely digital world. And I've been looking at a couple of recent psychological studies that are showing that, like, Gen Z, for example, is having a really tough time because they're growing up in this and they don't have that benefit of what you and I had growing up, where we didn't have that and we were face to face and we were doing these things. So, even if what's going on today, which seems so crazy, it's like so much going on, even if it's not, that bad in relation to what previous times have been, the fact that we perceive it that way because of all that constant information coming in, I think has a much more significant effect on us mentally and psychologically. And that itself, when we think of people kind of coming up there and stepping out and doing the crazy things, getting up there, attempted assassination, stuff like that, it becomes a lot easier for people to kind of fall into that, I think, just because of that, what's going on psychologically. So, I don't know that it is. I don't have statistics on just how significant it is now than what it's been in the past. But, I have to, I do have that, that background in psychology. And so, I have to kind of stop myself and go, well, maybe it's that. But again, even if it is, I think that just sets up a whole slew of other problems, like really significant problems that we have to deal with.
Yeah. Listen, I think your comment is valid. Having said that, I think the level and gravity of the data we're getting today, I know a lot of people still are not on social media. They're watching Fox News or CNN. Dude, this is a lot of data here, okay? I don't remember a time, if I'm just being really factual, I remember Nixon, the whole Spiro Agnew thing. I remember JFK, MLK, RFK shooting. And all the stories that went along with that. I knew when I was 7 years old, I'm somebody shot him, dude. It was not some guy in Cuba, right? Some foreign guy that, just had one of these. And I'd had enough experience with weapons that I'm like, come on, man. Somebody made that shot. So I've never really believed it. And here we are now 50, 60 years later, and it's happening again. And it's dawned on me, I'm like, we didn't really uncover what really happened. And so guess what we're doing? We're repeating it now. Yeah. And if we don't, I am so hopeful Trump gets in office. And one thing I think he has to do now, since he's been a victim of an assassination attempt, is, hey guys, we need to go and look at what happened back in the 60s. And ever since then, I don't know if we'll get there, but I think America is going to have to either air all its dirty linen in public, or it's going to decline rapidly, sadly, because it will keep doing this, right? It'll keep hiding And I know this isn't a political or emotional show. It wasn't designed for this, but there's just so much going on right now in volume all over the world that it makes me uncomfortable, but it also makes me very comfortable with my Bitcoin position. And if it was, I would be terrified right now if I did not have Bitcoin.
Yeah.
I would literally be going to bed at night, Chris, going, fucking hell, dude. I've worked 65 years of my life. And, I've got some money, but my lifestyle could get seriously hammered, right? And I don't want a bunch of people that are angry and upset and hungry and scared around me. That is unstable.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. 100%, man.
I think, by the way, Chris, I really like how you talked about perception, because I do think you're absolutely right that that's what matters. We could be living, because I always hear people say, well, guys, if you look at the stats, assuming those stats are true, this metric's good, this metric's good, this metric's, and like none of that matters if people don't care, right? And I can pivot this because I'm very curious how much that just ties to the market in general. Does it matter how well the market's doing, or does it matter how people think the market's doing? And that's what price measures. Actually, that's a genuine question. I don't know.
Yeah. And this is something, often talk our students about and just, out in social media about, is this idea of perception versus reality, right? Because how you perceive things becomes your reality. And then you actually respond in relation to what you perceive is going on. And I know Gary's seen this, in his life as he's dealt with the markets, especially with energy and whatnot. It's not what things actually are. It's how do people perceive that they are, because that's what people then trade off of. And so, or invest off of and whatever. And so when you look at the markets, why we often talk about the market is not the same as the economy, right? People are like, oh, well, the economy is doing this and this, but the market's still going up. Well, yeah, because the market's not the economy. Now, eventually, you're going to see the market react. But again, that goes back to my whole belief in how the market works, which is this idea of social mood and how are people in the aggregate feeling? Because the quickest way we can understand how they're feeling is where do they put their dollars in the market? If they're feeling good, if they're feeling safe or whatever, they're not overly concerned about the market, crashing or whatever. Well, they put their money in the markets. And then more money in the markets means, businesses are still encouraged to kind of continue building and maybe hiring more people. But if people aren't feeling so good about it, they'll pull the money out of the market. Market will start going down. Companies start consolidating, start laying off people, start slowing down production. And we end up seeing all that in the economic indicators afterward, right? Economic indicators are always, after the fact. So, yeah, again, it comes back to, there is reality, and then there is how do people actually perceive that reality, because how they perceive it becomes their reality.
Chris, I think that's a good summary. Hey, Simon, we just had Simon bounce in. Simon, thank you so much for joining. I pinged you earlier this morning, and you said, look, I'm out doing duties. You were probably buying those fresh flowers. You're a fresh flower guy. That's why I like you, dude. I love fresh flowers in my house, and I stopped doing it about 2 months ago, and I miss them. And seeing them, I can just smell them. How you doing, buddy? Coming from
awesome. So we got Chris, Gary, Sam, myself, the X-Space crew, and now we're doing it face to face. Thanks for having me, Gary.
Yeah, dude, good, really good to have you. You're one of the gifts. You and Chris are both gifts that have been brought to me from Bitcoin. I would never have met either one of you guys. I find this amazing. Bitcoin's at $66,000, and I am convinced not one penny of value in Bitcoin is placed on me connecting with really cool people like these two cats, including Sam. I wouldn't have met Sam. I wouldn't be doing any of this. And I have never been in an industry that offers that. What is it? A bonus? It's some gratuity that like I really value, man. I have never met anyone, poor or rich, who had enough great friends, great intellectual friends, or people to have conversations with. And not in one industry have I've ever been in that has connected me with so many cool people. And I cannot say this over and over and over again, how important it is to me. It's actually more important to me than the money I've made. It is so much more important than the money I made. So Simon, why don't you tell people who you are, where you're coming from, and then like just kind of we normally get into price, but quite frankly, I don't think price movements right now are important. We have so many other things going on, dude. We have, like the point you made, Netanyahu landed here last night. We don't even have a freaking leader to meet him, whether you like the guy or not. We literally didn't even have a guy to meet the prime minister of Israel. There's so much chaos going on, dude. Like, from your perspective, is this next level?
Well, I think it's just a sign of everything that's happening together, and like tying that back to the Bitcoin conversation. You know, Bitcoin, we've been on this journey since I joined the community in 2011. But before the Bitcoin community, I was part of the monetary reform community. And the monetary reform community were just a bunch of people that were discussing the Ponzi nature of investment banking and banking and finance and money. And I left investment banking in 2006. And I wanted to give lectures, and I started giving lectures across the UK, and then started to give some in Chicago and various other places in America. At then the community, there was a guy called, I think he's still a politician now, actually, Dennis Kucinich. You familiar with Dennis Kucinich? Does that name ring a bell? Where he introduced an act that would remove banks' ability to create money. It would be on par with an End the Fed bill, which Thomas Massie has just put in. And suddenly there was this massive amount of excitement because all the theory that we were discussing for years. And really, when you explain to people like how money was created in the monetary reform days, you were put in the category of a conspiracy theorist. We'd be like, banks create money every time they issue a loan. And, they create this digital currency. And people are like, what do you mean a digital currency? Well, it's like a digital representation of the paper that you think is money. And you're like, no, it doesn't. Well, yeah, it doesn't. I thought a bank would just put together borrowers and lenders. You're like, no, they actually create money every time they issue a loan. And by the way, that money comes with interest. And the interest to pay off that money doesn't actually exist. And so you have to find somebody that's going to either take on that debt, and it's the world's largest regulated Ponzi scheme. And it was actually initiated by these institutions called central banks. And you think that they're there with a set specific goal, but they actually perpetuate a guaranteed, inevitable, predictable recycling of debt. And when you used to talk about these things, you then go through, well, how was that created? And then you'd go into the history of central banking, and you say, well, actually, the King of England wanted to borrow 1.2 million, so they created this crazy scheme where rather than going to the people and trying to raise funds through the bond market, they actually just created this ledger that went back and forth, and they were able to fund both sides of the war with France and the war with England in Waterloo. And by the way, this whole thing was exported, you go through all these different things, and it was just too far-fetched and too boring. But when the financial crisis happened in 2008, the lectures went from like 50 old people in a room and gold bugs to 300 students in a room, and the youth being understanding, hey, what's going on here? And that was a really exciting time. But it wasn't until I actually tried to create a bank. So I got fed up with dealing with politicians and saying, there was actually a banker called David Davis. He was actually recently assassinated in his home. Who was in charge of the investigation on banking in the UK. And if you look back recently, there was a member of parliament, David Davis, that was killed in his home. And he was a part of like the Vickers report, which was this big investigation into the 2008 financial crisis and things like that. And yeah, we had this monetary reform community. And then suddenly we were trying to create a bank. We got fed up with trying to say to politicians, this is how you do it. Because we wanted to give people the ability to own their own money in custody. And then they would have the ability to spend their money in custody without interference. And every time we issued a loan, it would just be a peer-to-peer loan. It would be somebody else's deposit. And the Bank of England said to us, all right, well, in order to do that, firstly, you can't do that. Full reserve banking is far too disruptive to the system. It's a systemic risk. If you could, you can't get an account with the Bank of England. So instead, you're going to have an account with Barclays. And Barclays is going to take your deposit, but they're going to lever it up through fractional reserve banking. And then in order to even be in the equation, you've got to put 60 million in the account at the Bank of England through Barclays. And Barclays will get to lever that up and you won't. And so we realized it was impossible to actually create a full reserve bank. And at that point, I'd eaten through all my savings. I had a good career prior to this. I got deep in debt in order to try and create it. And after 3 years of trying it, I was no better off than when we originally started. But my wife, who she was working at Barclays at the time, and she quit to join the mission as well. And I was writing this book, actually, Bank to the Future. And someone on Facebook, this guy called Johnny Bitcoin, messaged me, and he said, "Hey Simon, have you heard of Bitcoin as the future of money?" And I was like, "Yeah, I've heard about like some of these digital currency attempts. What's Bitcoin?" And he said, "Well, I've moved into this squat in Old Street in London, and I've sold my house, and I'm hanging around with these devs. Would you like to come to Old Street and find out a bit more about it?" So I went to this crack den in London, and there were a bunch of devs that were there. One of them was this guy called Amir Tucky, who was one of the first and early Bitcoin developers in Bitcoin Core. Like he said that, "Hey, we're organizing a conference in Prague. Would you like to come and speak about, your experience with banking?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'd love to do that. Problem is, I'm literally down to my last bit of credit card debt. I'm broke. I'm broker than broke." And so my wife, she kind of said, "Well, look, we can do it. We'll get another credit card." She took out a credit card for me, and we put our last bit of money together, and we flew over to Prague. We went to this Bitcoin conference, and there was about 100 people in the room. There was just these real cypherpunk geeks. And I was the only banker in the room, but then Max Kaiser came as well. And then there was this other guy that was like, from TradFi. And I gave this presentation. It's still on my channel in YouTube. I recorded it and uploaded it to my YouTube channel. And instantly we realized this actually solves the problem that we were trying to solve with banking. So if we build on top of Bitcoin, then everyone has the ability to own their own money. And once they own their own money, they can spend it. And once they can spend it, it's actually got this fixed monetary policy that will protect them from inflation. And so at that stage, we decided, right, we're not creating a bank. We're just going to support this community. And there was a bunch of companies that just couldn't raise finance because no VCs would look at any of the companies. At this time, Mt. Gox and BitInstant were the only ways to get Bitcoin. And this guy called Jesse Powell came along and said, "Hey, I want to create an exchange." And there's a couple of guys from Europe. There was this lady there. She wanted to create this hardware wallet called Trezor that allowed you to own your own Bitcoin. And there was this exchange called Bitstamp. And then there was this guy called Tony Galippi, and he presented his version for MOIP. He was calling it money over IP. He said it's like Skype, but we can create money over IP protocol, and then allow everyone to start accepting payments in Bitcoin. And he created this company called BitPay. And And so what we decided to do is, rather than actually build a bank, we realized that this was a community. And there are lots of people that wanted to build some amazing stuff. Now this new form of money existed. And so we pivoted Bank to the Future, the company that we were going to create a non-fractional reserve bank for, and just started allowing people to invest their Bitcoin and invest in some of these disruptive startups. We had to change securities law in the UK. The laws that we changed, which became the equity crowdfunding rules, later were used by President Obama to create the Jobs Act and change actually securities laws. But we spent this time, and sorry, this is a long story, but I get carried away of trying to understand the foundation that we got here. And we started funding these companies. So we invested in a bunch of startups: Coinbase, Kraken, Bitfinex, BitPay, Ripple Labs that was trying to do stuff with the banking side, the company. And we just started funding all these different companies. And it was all funded. It was a bottom-up movement by the Bitcoin community. And we also started, doing really interesting things. So we launched like a Bitcoin bond that was backed by mining in Iceland. And so we built out this mining farm in Iceland. It was powered by volcanoes. And it paid daily dividends every single day. We paid out thousands of Bitcoins to, we only sold about a million worth of this Bitcoin bond. One of the first investors was my mom. This was my original investment. And we were just hustling, trying to find people that wanted to invest in this thing. It was less than $1 million, actually. Yeah, I think it was only like about 150K initially. It just started paying out all of these Bitcoins. It paid them out every day in real time. And we just built this community. And as Bitcoin started to go up and up in value, some of these investments started to become the highest returning investments. And sudden, we were rich, to say it quite frankly. And I don't think anyone was really focused on the money. It was just suddenly, all right, the price is going up, and all these crazy events would happen. Like Julian Assange would come along and say, hey, we're getting censored. Visa's taken us down. MasterCard's taken us down. Bank of America will shutting all our bank account. Anyone that uses a card payment to try and transfer to us is getting their bank account shut down. And he said, well, let's raise finance with Bitcoin. And it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And this thing, it was just a real bottom-up organic movement. It never should have succeeded, but it just did. And we started to realize that there was this new political class of activists that really wanted to make a difference in the future of finance. And we were doing it on our own. We were independent of the VCs. They all came later, but we were all funded by ourselves. And we just had this kind of freedom movement of having your own money, being able to spend it and invest it. And then obviously all the regulations came through, all the scams came through, Mt. Gox collapsed. And ever since then, we've been in this cycle of craziness. But every 4 years, the craziness just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And now we're at where we are right now, where I just cannot keep up with what's happening. And so we went from a bottom-up movement where...
Hey, Simon, on that point, before you showed up, sorry to interrupt you, but Sam asked me, he said, hey, as an investor, there's so much chaos right now. How do you make a decision before, we got 4 months till November the 5th, the election? Do you think people are going to hold back and wait till the president is decided and we get through all this, whatever the hell we're going through? Seems like, a movie, like a fiction movie to me that we're in. It was interesting, my response to him. I'm like, dude, I'm in Bitcoin. It doesn't really matter. Like, and it really hit me. I'm like, oh, wow. I bet you a lot of people are sitting here going, hey, where am I going to put the next my next investment. It's very unstable. Don't know what to do. And I'm like, oh, I know what to do. Like, it doesn't matter. Biden, Schmaden, Trumpy, Dumpy, Lumpy. It doesn't matter. Bitcoin's going to just perform just fine. In fact, I would build a case that all the stuff you went through in the very beginning years, and I know the audience loves these stories. One, the real story is how few people actually really capitalized on this opportunity. Like, it's extremely tiny. Everybody thinks how many people made a shitload of money. You and I could spend a week on Spaces talking about how much money has not been actually achieved, that everyone that was early underestimated what they were doing, or they didn't fully understand what their rhetoric was. They didn't really fully believe it at their heart. They weren't planned. Like, I just don't think anyone can understand what's happening here. But when a guy like me can say, hey, it doesn't matter what happens to the presidency, Bitcoin's going to rock. Right. In fact, the more insane it gets, like I thought when he was shot, I'm like, dude, if you don't have a better advertisement for Bitcoin, then I don't know what advertisement you're going to use. This is exactly why I got in Bitcoin in 2018. I'm like, shit, this fucking world's going to shit in a handbasket very quickly. And I need to protect my family. And I need to protect all the work I did in the past 40 years. Imagine if I didn't have Bitcoin right now, to both of you guys, I would be terrified every night going to bed going, oh my God, I have not done my job for my kids. My kids are going to get hammered in this new world. And I actually believe, I am not trying to be dark. You know, you and I got pegged last night for being dark. I'm like, dude, there's the difference between being dark and making shit up and looking at what the hell is going on. This is only going to get worse, because it's escalating at such a high rate now that they're left with nothing else to do but do crazy shit, man. Like crazy stuff, right? So, but I got to tell you, it really hit me when I said it out loud. Well, Sam, I'm in Bitcoin. I'm just going to keep buying Bitcoin. Doesn't matter. When I said that, I was like, wow, that is actually the right answer. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I know I'm in it, but
yeah. Well, okay. So when I was first in Bitcoin, I was deep in fiat debt. I wasn't earning enough. I lost my income because I was trying to create this bank. Even when I was working in investment banking, you know, I was young. I was 23. You know, I had to keep up with the Joneses. The job in banking is to go out all night, get drunk, and get up really early in the morning, put in 100 hours. And then the young people are expected to, you know, do all the entertaining and stuff. And I could never even keep up then, even though it was a good salary for me at the time. But I could never break that debt cycle. My first Bitcoin, when we went to the conference, we bought 5 Bitcoin at $3. It wasn't $3 each per Bitcoin at the time. We were always valuing it in dollars or pounds for me. And the price actually during this conference crashed from $30 to $3 during the conference. And it was a 90% correction over a couple of days. But because none of us were kind of in the money and we weren't even focused on whether this thing could succeed, you know, there wasn't much of an expectation. But as the price started to go through all of its different volatility, you know, I would be measuring in terms of, right, I've got this insurmountable debt. I'd love to buy a house one day. How much do those things cost? They're like $500,000, you know, back then. And I was like, you know, you need to get a mortgage to get one of those. It's not possible that you could just buy it outright. Like, I don't know how I'm ever going to break that cycle. But I had to actually default on my debt. And I just defaulted and said, you know what, as I started to see and understand this, I said, I'm going to do one thing. And I didn't do it in the beginning all the way through. I went through my peaks and troughs of beliefs, as we all do, because, you know, it was so much harder to believe in it back then. But I said every month, no matter what happens, I'm going to have more Bitcoin than the previous month. And that was my simple rule. And I said, no matter how much it is, even if I have to put $10, $100, whatever happens, I've got to have more Bitcoin this month than the previous month. And that's a rule that I tried to stick to. And now I'm ultra disciplined on that. And I got ultra disciplined on it. Once you go through a cycle of doing that for 4 years. So I challenge everyone to do that for 4 years. And once you do, you'll become what I call, rather than a fiat thinker where you're valuing your net worth in dollars, you'll start valuing your net worth in Bitcoin. And you realize that the game is to accumulate as much Bitcoin. Then you learn the economics. You realize there's only ever going to be 21 million of these things. And every year, more and more people lose them and more people want them. And yeah, we go through our cycles where someone tries to trick us into thinking something so bad that Bitcoin's dead. And in the early days, the things that were making Bitcoin dead were really, really scary. But nowadays, they're just not scary at all. They're things like, the government's going to ban this whole thing simultaneously, or quantum computers going to break cryptography, or this whole thing was created by the NSA and Satoshi's going to come back and Satoshi is a CIA agent that's going to crash the whole thing. But in the beginning we had to deal with, you're going to go in prison for this. This thing's completely illegal. You're buying them off somebody that's selling them on an assassination market. Just really outrageous, scary things that we had to go through. And bit by bit, we just learned that Bitcoin seems to survive and adjust to all these different things. So once you do it,
Chris, have you gotten to a point where you think in terms of Bitcoin as, hey, I have more Bitcoin today? You don't think about the US dollar value?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, my job and what I do and what we do at the company, we have to talk about price. But me personally, that's what I talk about. I say you got to have that bag, even if you're trading, even if whatever, you should always have that bag of Bitcoin that you're constantly adding to, because, anything can happen at any time. And this is me 30 years of doing this, telling anything can happen. And you want to make sure that if anything happens, you're still okay. And hopefully better than okay. So yeah, I mean, for me personally, it's about, how do I get an extra few Satoshis? You and I kind of joked about it a bit when I made that comment about, buy it, go out there, find some lawns to mow, make a few extra bucks, throw it in there. And I'm only half kidding about that. What I'm trying to say is a lot of what Simon's saying here. I think one of the biggest things about his story is the fact that, he got out of investment banking, went in there, tried to do this thing with this bank, completely wrecked him financially. So he lost, right? He lost, but then he got into Bitcoin now and he's doing well, and as you've said before, and as I've said before, it's hard to trust somebody. If you want to put money into somebody or believe in what they're doing, give me somebody who's failed before. Give me somebody who's gotten back up and continued to try. Maybe they failed 2 or 3 times, because what we know is most people who become successful at something they've done have failed in the past. I would say it's probably almost impossible to find somebody who's become successful at something without having ever failed. But what you learn is, people are of a certain type. And those of us that are out there creating, we're driven to create, right? We're driven, that's that entrepreneurial spirit. And we realize we're going to fail. We realize we're going to take chances and we might go completely broke, and we do it anyway. We realize government's going to come out there and government's going to convince society that we're terrible people and we're doing whatever to people that don't have as much money and all this other nonsense. And yet we still go out there. We still take on all the risk. We still pay the big taxes. We still deal with the rhetoric and how we're evil and how we're terrible and all these things. But, I think it's a certain type of person that gets out there and does that. And so, when you look at it that way and you go, okay, well, why are these guys talking about, picking up Bitcoin and just continuing to pick it up? Don't worry what the price is, just the goal being to collect more Bitcoin. And I think that's probably part of it. And that may be why a lot of other people have trouble understanding that, right? Why they're still hooked on price, because it is that different mindset. So hopefully what we can do here, in Spaces and YouTube and other shows that all of us are on is, we just keep talking about it. And when people are open enough to hearing it and actually listening, maybe it makes a difference. Maybe they understand and then they jump in. Because, we can't force people to do the things that we think they should be doing, the things that, we think are going to make them successful, the things that we've done, to get where we've gotten in our individual lives here, professionally and personally. But we can continue to be in front of people. We can continue talking about it, and we can continue making sure the information is out there in front of them for when they do, right? Everybody hits that point at a different time. Simon hit it back there, back at the beginning, man. Props to you for that. I heard about Bitcoin in 2010. I thought, man, yeah, this would be kind of cool. Go ahead and mine this. Life got in the way. Didn't think about it again until 2017. A lot of missed opportunity there. But and nowadays we have people that, because of the price of Bitcoin sitting right now around 66,000, a lot of people coming in going, man, but if it goes up to 100,000, that's only going to be this much increase. And they're still thinking in terms of dollar value rather than thinking in terms of, how do I generate more extra fiat so that I can buy more Bitcoin and just focus on collecting that Bitcoin, right? And I think that's probably the hardest thing that, that we and what we try to do out here in relation to that. I think that's probably the hardest thing for us to do is to convince, because you can't convince anybody, but to help them hopefully see, the other way of looking at it and what those benefits are more, further down the line rather than just, the price of it going up and then selling it and making some profit on it kind of thing.
Yeah, this is why I instantly got, for want of a better way of saying to this, attracted to you guys. And I mean attracted in an energetic, because I saw a bunch of guys that want to help people. And immediately when I got on Gary's space, I got no idea how I ended up on your space. We were just there one time and somehow we would, you just like, and I saw Gary, I can see in his energy and everything he's doing that he really cares about his audience. He was telling them what they needed to know. So if they were talking shit, he was telling them, you're talking shit, you're down the wrong path here. But he was coming from a place of care. Yeah. And it kind of brought me back to, we talk about those early stories. So I was in the right place at the right time, trying to create a bank at the same time as Bitcoin was created, at the same time as just after the financial crisis. So I got it. It was easy for me to understand. But at the same time, there were people that made a massive difference in my life. So at that time, I also read a book, Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And, he's telling you to leverage debt, get into real estate. But it was all about, the mindset of how the wealthy think versus get a good job, go to university, and you end up on the tax cycle and the rat race. That really resonated with me because I was in the rat race. I had a great job. I had a great education. And I still couldn't get out of my overdraft, even no matter how much they were going to pay me. And every time they paid me, I found a way of being deeper in debt. And I just couldn't get out of the rat race. And so that really resonated with me. And then I remember his second book. I read his second one was The Cash Flow Quadrant. And I still to this day remember that you have like earned income, and then you have self-employed, and then you have a business owner, and then you have an investor. And so, I was trying to go from earned income to being self-employed. And then I had to build a business, which is where you're building a system where other people do the work and you create and enable the system. And that's an incredibly complex challenge. But the bits they don't tell you is that you end up with one investment, which is your business. And in the beginning, you spend years just paying your staff and you don't get shit, right? You're just every month, you're trying to figure out, how do I make payroll for my staff? and how do I get more staff so I can get through. And you go through this journey, and you're sacrificing, but you're trying to build shareholder value, and there's a bigger vision there, and you know it's going to pay off in the end. But for years I didn't pay myself because we were just trying to figure out how to pay the staff. But Bitcoin did this really weird thing. And we put Bitcoin on our balance sheet because we started accepting investments in Bitcoin, and we got a cut of every investment. So when we were paying out all those Bitcoins to our investors, you know, we get a percentage of every Bitcoin. And we learned really early on that how can I earn enough dollars to pay for the staff, but for the company to keep the Bitcoin? And so we managed to get this right between, let's keep the company really lean, you know, and let's not get VC funding. Let's see if Bitcoin could be our VC. And so we never sold the Bitcoin in the company, and the company's balance sheet just kept growing. And then rather than growing the number of staff, we were always investing in technology to try and do more with less. And rather than going deeper and deeper into a VC cycle. So, you know, we did the reverse of a Michael Saylor model with a very small company that was in the Bitcoin industry that was earning Bitcoin, but make sure we earn enough dollars never to sell our Bitcoin. And I learned that really early on because the company balance sheet just grew and grew and grew. And the Bitcoin just had this incredible asset on the balance sheet. And then I was able to pay myself in Bitcoin. And when I was paying myself in Bitcoin, you know, I was able to realize that I was going over from being fully exposed to this one investment called a company. And it's the riskiest type of investment. 90% of them fail. You're 100% exposed. You know, you're giving your guts. You're doing everything you can. And if it fails, you're wrecked. You're done. You're toast, right?
Greatest amount of wealth, however, of wealth on this planet has been created by building companies. This bullshit about everybody got rich buying real estate, it's just bullshit. There were a lot of millionaires made from real estate. Dude, building businesses where you're underpaid for 8 years, grossly underpaid, man. And then you get a big payday and people are like, oh, wow, that was easy. It's like, yeah, I lived on zero salary, bro, for 8 years. I had no income. Everybody's making more money than me. They all get bonuses every year, irrespective of if you're crushing it or not, because you got competition. You got to keep everybody happy. It's a long slog, dude. Most people are so unequipped to be a private equity, like to build their own business.
Yeah.
And like I look at Bitcoin and go, okay, you guys want to own a business, go buy Bitcoin, dude. It's the only business that you don't need a marketing department. You don't have a CFO to call. There's like, it's so zero human error. And when you start to realize most businesses fail because of human mistakes.
No.
Okay. They run out of money. Their strategy was wrong. They were in over their, like the market's too small. The market's too big. Their timing's off. Just so many things can go wrong, man. They think being first is cool. You know, Bitcoin is the only business or product I have ever bought in my life that was the first. And I actually think it's going to be the only thing I've ever seen that was introduced first and it survives the longest. Most first guys don't get it right. Google was not first. Google was like number what, 12 or 14?
Yeah.
Right? They were not first. Nobody's first that's here today. But the Bitcoin thing, you know, Simon, when you were investing in Bitcoin, I think that the risk was so much greater at $3 than it is at 60,000. This is the piece that people need to understand. 60,000 is not your problem. The $3 was your problem. $3, most people lost their coins or they converted it to $300. That's not happening now, man. The state of Wisconsin has a 0.5% allocation at $151 million. They're not selling their Bitcoin, dude. It could triple in value and they're not going to rebalance. They won't have to. It's 1.5% of their entire portfolio. That'll then be $225 million sitting on the state of Wisconsin. which that was the first quarter of the ETF S13s. We are literally 2 weeks away from getting the other S13s. How many other states are going to go? Yeah, I did 150 million. Texas will do 350, 400. And that's before, like the best Michael Saylor video for me is literally about 90 seconds long. And he says, dude, it only takes 10 billionaires to decide they want $1 billion worth of Bitcoin each.
Yeah.
Okay. That changes the market. And I've been using numbers like, hey, 400,000 super rich people, $25 million each. That's $10 trillion market cap.
Yeah.
400,000 people deploying $25 million each. My brother will deploy $150 million in his first whack. I guarantee you he's going to ape into this fucking thing, worry he's missed it, and he's going to go do 2,500 Bitcoin. And he's a small guy. Okay. He's not a monster. So $25 million, 406,000 families. Let's say half of those families never heard of Bitcoin. Okay. You need 200,000 families doing 50 million. These are not massive investments, dude. All those families can buy airplanes worth more than fucking $50 million. Right?
Yeah.
They don't even think about it. They already have an airplane, by the way. So they don't need another airplane. Okay. They may not even upgrade it for 2 or 3 years. They love buying these planes every 3 or 4 years because there's some benefits to it, but they also like the new shit. I don't see how you get uncomfortable with a scenario. That makes sense. 400,000 super rich people. This is before the ETFs, man. This assumes no institutional adoption whatsoever. Zero. It just assumes 200,000 families whack out 50 million. And the kind of people I'm talking about, Sheikh, Mookie Wookie, some prime minister, the head of Ukraine. Dude, if I'm the head of Ukraine right now, I want my Bitcoin. Because I know I got a target right on the freaking front of my head. Like, to me, Bitcoin's a great solution if I'm him, right?
Yeah, and this is the importance of going full circle, valuing your wealth in Bitcoin rather than dollars. Because when Bitcoin was $30, everybody says it's too late, I missed the boat. When it was $3, it's dead, it's over, right? Then it went up to, I saw my Bitcoin, crash. And then it went up to $250 and then crashed down to about $30. At $250, too late, missed the boat. At $30, it's dead, it's over. It then went up to $1,250. At $1,250, too late, missed the boat. It then came down to $300. It's over, it's dead. It was nice while it lasted. It then went up to $20,000. And then, that's it. I've got to find the next shit coin.
Yeah.
I got to find something cheaper. All the value's gone.
Yeah.
It crashed down to $3,000. Oh, it's COVID. It's over. This thing's dead. It's not. It was nice while it lasted. Peter Schiff was right. Warren Buffett was right. They were all right. And it all kicks in. It then went up to $69,000. And then it crashed back down to $16,500. And it's always too late. I've missed the boat. It's dead. That will never change. And there is always somebody telling you why here's the next big Bitcoin killer. Here's why Bitcoin's going to fail. Here's why it's dead. Here's why you're an idiot because I made 1000x over here. Have you not seen this cheaper, faster, better, more secure thing? Have you not seen this new private thing? Have you're an idiot. It's not generating yield. And it's just, it never, ever stops, right? No human, unless you value your wealth in Bitcoin, when you're valuing your wealth in dollars, you'll be psychologically impacted by all of that. When you value your wealth in Bitcoin, you want the price to go down and you celebrate it going up. So whenever the price goes down, I get more Bitcoin for my dollar. and I want to work harder, and I want to hustle more, and I want to get my expense down so I can buy more Bitcoin. As the price goes up, you celebrate with everyone else, and it brings all the other people in. Now, once the price goes up, you realize that all of these little crazy cypherpunks, they got rich. And then suddenly all these retail investors, they front run Wall Street. And then suddenly there were all these Bitcoin companies that turned into bloody Binance, which was at one quarter making more money than JP Morgan. You're like, what the hell are these companies all about? And then suddenly you get a public company that says, hey, we're going to put Bitcoin on our balance sheet. And you get a MicroStrategy that turns this company that no one's ever heard of, that's a software company, that becomes one of the highest performing companies on NASDAQ, with this genius that foresaw everything, but got on the wrong side of .com booms and busts and all sorts of shit. And suddenly just was an absolute genius in terms of how to use Bitcoin. And then suddenly a president says, I get it. Let's make it legal tender. Let's sort out the tax. Come to our country. You don't have to pay tax. Come to our country, build a business. Hey, I'm going to get rid of all these criminals. We're going to put all the gangs and we're going to put them in prison. And everyone was giving him criticism for human rights violations and all sorts of stuff. But he took the country and made it safe, persuaded a bunch of Bitcoiners to come over there, made it legal tender, and said, hey, you know what? There's all these businesses that used to get extorted by gangsters, where they had to pay 30% of their income to gangsters. And these were the brokest business. These were the little coffee shop owners, right? And when I went over there, because I felt safe enough to go over there, I went down and I said, can you pretend that there is still a gangster that's going to knock on your door every week and request 30% of your income? And you found that 30%. How did you do it? Because you knew that they were going to kill your mom or kill your daughter or shoot you in the head. Did you find that 30%? Yeah, I found it every week. So you know you can find it. What if you just put that 30% in Bitcoin and pretended that a gangster was going to come and steal it from you every week? Don't increase your wealth. Save it in Bitcoin, and created this culture of people that went through the 4-year cycle. Because remember, when Bukele told the IMF, go fuck yourself, and when you told the Bank of England, you're not concerned about our people, he had to face ridicule everywhere. You know, the IMF downgraded him. His bonds started trading at a 70% discount at one point. The price started going down. He was saying that everyone's going to go broke. You know, the Bitcoin went from $20,000 to $3,000, but he kept at it through the whole 4-year cycle, and he got the last laugh. Yeah. And he will get the last laugh. And now he's buying a Bitcoin every single day. Now Trump sees that. Trump has the opportunity to tap into the Bitcoin lobby, get all of these voters, 50 million Americans own Bitcoin or crypto. They want self-custody. They want to continue. They've been through 4 years of Democratic, Elizabeth Warren, Gary Gensler, FTX. You know, and even with that regulations, they still let the FTX Ponzi and Celsius Ponzi scam billions of dollars out of people. Even while they were cracking down on the industry, shut loads of people's bank accounts down. You know, nothing worked. And yet Bitcoin survived all this thing. It goes through another cycle. And now Trump recognizes that. Well, RFK recognized it. Let's give it props where it's due. He came first. And Trump says, yeah, I'll have some of that. And now he's going to be at the Bitcoin conference this week. And he doesn't even need to, all he needs to say is, you know what? Let's make America great again. Let's drain the swamp. The Federal Reserve, I'll try and get them to lower their interest rates. But what if we wanted to hedge against the Federal Reserve? What if they don't lower rates for us? What if we just took that 200,000 Bitcoin that was confiscated from Silk Road, and rather than the Department of Justice selling them like Germany did, what if we just transfer that over to Treasury and we use it as a reserve asset? And that's all we need to do. Signal that the world reserve currency, while it's going through this incredible $35 trillion debt cycle, is actually going to continue that game with the Fed, but we're also going to have Bitcoin as a reserve asset. To me, that increases the creditworthiness of the US. To me, that is a bullish signal for the US. It's not a bearish signal. And it's smart. It's draining the swamp. And it's so good for Bitcoin. That's a complete win-win-win. Yeah, let's put Hester Pierce in charge of the SEC. Let's hand over Bitcoin and Ethereum to the CFTC. Let's allow people to hedge against fractional reserve banking. Let's give them stablecoin regulations. And let's see what wins. Banks can adjust. They can launch their own stablecoins. You know, they can have full reserve banking. Now anyone can send a digital dollar anywhere around the world. And rather than having the FDIC try and bail out, let's just put it up to the market. Stablecoins, they depeg as soon as there's something up with them. You know, when USDC had funds in Silicon Valley Bank and $6 billion was uncertain whether it's coming back, the USDC dollar traded at a little discount. The market factored in the exact discount. It knew how solvent it was. And then as soon as Silicon Valley Bank said, hey, FDIC is going to cover it, we got this short-term loan, went right up back to $1. This is free market. This is the constitutional version of banking that presidents got assassinated to try and fight against the first central bank in America, the second central bank in America, and in the end, the Federal Reserve won. You know, this is the perfect narrative. This is the perfect, we want to make America great again. We want to drain the swamp. This is the US Constitution, because the US Constitution says that we need to provide our people, we the people, the government's role is to provide people with sound money backed by gold. This is digital gold. This is a way of curveballing, and you can do the 2-in-1. You don't need to do extreme. And may the best money win. May the best money win. And this is the opportunity that exists today, because we created this little experiment that said, you know what? Individuals learned how to beat the cycle and they became wealthy. And what did they do with their wealth? They invested it. They reinvested in the system. This is free markets working as they're meant to work. And reinvesting, a wealth effect. And then you had companies do it. And then you had countries do it. You'll probably get central bank digital currencies do it in the end. You know, the central bank digital currency that I'll use is not the one that wants my iris and says you can't spend money in this and your passport comes off because you didn't inject yourself here. No one wants that central bank digital currency. I don't mind the central bank digital currency where it's provable reserve backed by Bitcoin, is backed by resources where you can, and all sorts of stuff. Now, the other side of the world, the BRICS corridor, they're going to create that. So America needs to create that as well. And that's the opportunity that exists today. This is beautiful free markets. And Trump recognized that. He started meeting all the Bitcoin miners. He recognized, right, we've got energy independent. You know, we've got this amazing industry in Texas. China fucked up. They said, we're going to ban Bitcoin mining. What a ridiculous move. Right, banning Bitcoin mining. So at the time they allowed people, right? If you want the government's agenda is to get tax and get data. Can you think of a stupid thing like banning exchanges where all of those exchanges now go to Japan and South Korea and America? They get all the data, they get all the tax collection. And then you allow Bitcoin mining for a bit. What is Bitcoin mining? Well, you take some dollars or yen, you buy equipment, and that equipment gets plugged into electricity and spits out Bitcoin. There's no data there. You know, it's like literally the most antithesis of it. politicians just need to think. They need to listen to Gary when he gives his pitch. They need to listen to Dennis Porter, and they are listening. This is and this is global. Like, just the narrative of, I want all the Bitcoins to be mined in America. Well, China's going to say, well, we want them in China. We got the chips in Taiwan. We got the equipment. Bitmain's always been making the ASICs in China. Why don't we let them just plug them into our electricity? And let's the competition roll. And let's give the world free money. Let's give the world digital hard sound money. And let's give people the ability to hedge. And let's hedge ourselves from these central banks, because once you understand how the real power structure of the world works, these central banks aren't departments of governments. These central banks are occupying governments. They took away the ability for governments to earn seigniorage income from money creation, and they handed it over to the central bank, and at the same time implemented income tax. So everybody had to be taxed to pay the profits of the central bank, which was the vested interest of the private banking sector. And these were the things that presidents used to get assassinated and fought over to make sure it doesn't happen. Every government in the world needs to protect themselves from the central bank. They need to put Bitcoin on their balance sheet. And the central bank needs to protect themselves when they issue their CBDC and put Bitcoin on their balance sheet. Every individual, every company, every country needs to do it. The world will figure it out. Why? Because that's the way Bitcoin was designed. 21 million fixed supply. Every 4 years, the number of Bitcoins that created cuts in half. It's backed by electricity, and there's a global competition to secure the network. It adjusts to transaction fees. Those transaction fees are sent over to miners, and then you get this scarcity of Bitcoin in a global competition where everybody needs to acquire it. That's why this is the best business for you, because you are 10,000 steps ahead of most of the world figuring that stuff out.
Simon, why would the German government, or that province, or whatever you call it in Germany, because when you really think about it, I mean, if United States is holding 200,000 Bitcoin, that's $12 billion, I think, if I did the math right. Why would any government convert that to fiat when they have the ability to print fiat? It just makes no sense why you would get rid of that unique, rare asset when you're going to convert it to something you can create out of thin air. Why would they need to bring fiat back in the system? Now, Germany can't print its own euros. So maybe that's the reason. Maybe they're like, hey, we can't print our own euros, so we're going to create them from this.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a number of reasons that you could come up with. One is the left hand doesn't speak to the right hand. And
Probably.
we think of them as one homogenous organization.
That's right.
But there are actually lots of competing interests doing really stupid things, fighting for budgets, and maybe the division, the equivalent of the German DOJ, it wants to meet its own bonus, right?
Yeah.
So it has targets. It has a windfall. It's got this multi-billion-dollar asset that it managed to confiscate from what they call criminals. They've got targets, and they've got big towers that they need to pay for. And when you actually look at regulations, what's happening in the US? Well, the CFTC, the SEC, and Treasury are all fighting for who's going to get the fine.
Yeah.
The SEC I'll have $4.7 billion from Binance. Thank you very much. I'll take $4.5 billion from Do Kwon. And the CFT says, no, we want some of that. And so, you just follow the money and everything makes sense. So you've got people acting out of self-interest that aren't thinking of the long term. And this is the issue. This is why we have incredible government debt, because everyone's working to a 4-year cycle. If I was working to a 4-year business, I would have fucked everything up, right? If I wasn't working to how do I create value, shareholder value, and keep those Bitcoin, or if I was thinking how do I extract those Bitcoin for myself as an individual, and this is the problem with short-term thinking, long-term thinking, government bureaucracies. There's all sorts of reasons why this could be the case. But you think of it, you can print euros and you're selling your Bitcoin, the rarest asset that exists in the world, for euros. Insane move. And we will remember the German government forever. Mark it in the calendar. Bitcoin Pizza Guy is a legend because he went on Bitcoin Forum and persuaded somebody to send 10,000 Bitcoin, convert them to fiat, and buy 2 pizzas from Papa John's. And we've all got our own Bitcoin Pizza Guy story. I'm jumping around with a few stories, but let's bring them all full circle. I always, every single year, I tried to persuade the person. It was a very large purchase I made to acquire my house. I wanted to buy it outright. I just didn't want to be involved in banks. And I tried to get them to accept the Bitcoin. And it was 1,000 Bitcoin purchase. I every single year, I tell him the value of those 1,000 Bitcoin. And every single year he calculates, I've been working, like he's one of the largest property developers in the Isle of Man, right? This is the top of the chain in our little island of 85,000 people, like top developer. Every single year, he busts his guts doing real estate deals. And he never makes as much as he would have made if he kept those Bitcoin.
Of course.
And everyone does that mental calculation. And this is why the government doesn't want to support Bitcoin, because that is the fiat currency is designed in that way where they want the value to go down so that everybody's out busting their guts. And then you have to try and beat the system. And the bank said, well, we'll lend you the money and we'll skim off all the money. And then the central bank designs the system to fail. And that's, kind of the system. So Bitcoin Pizza Guy did that, and the German government will do that. We will remind the German government every year. For
sure. Chris, do you think that in this term that the U.S. really turns it on full on for Bitcoin? Do you think they embrace this? And does it matter what Republicans or Democrats, in your opinion?
I think at this point now, with as much as it's being pushed out there, by Trump, and then, Biden's team came over and did it. And especially if, Kamala becomes the Democrats' choice to run for president, and she continues that push. I think at this point, it's gotten out there so big within the political sphere that I don't think it really matters. Maybe there's a little bit more push for it with one than the other. But this is something I was talking about a few years back. And I said, this next cycle, this one, that came through, I was like, at that point, then we're going to start seeing real talk about, the central banks, CBDCs. We're going to see real, actual, legitimate interest by funds and whatnot. I was like, this is the time it's going to be here. And that is just the next step. I said that right there becomes the beginning of the whole next phase of Bitcoin. Up until that point, we've just been this thing that kind of happens in the corner, this thing that happens aside. We talk a lot of big stuff about it and everybody gets excited and then it comes back down, But when we get this institutional involvement, when we get bank CBDCs talk, when we get when we start doing that then begins that next phase where Bitcoin just kind of really starts becoming a mature asset. And we really then are going to start seeing what it can do. We talk about this, I've got my show on Wednesdays with the guys, Beards and Bitcoin, and we talk about this every week. And some of the stuff these guys have come up with is just crazy. But even with that, I look at that, I go, man, I bet you we can't even figure out what's going to come off of Bitcoin in the next 5 years. Forget 10 years, the next 5 years, especially as we get now into this next phase. And there's like real money looking at it. There's real, drive to do things with it. And Bitcoin as that base layer just opens up so much, not just in terms of what you can do with financial derivatives products and whatnot, as we've always done with other things, but man, oh man, what can you do even beyond that? And I think that's where it gets really exciting. So yeah, I think regardless of who wins the presidency, like I said, one may do a little bit more maybe than the other. But at the end of the day, I think Bitcoin's, in that position now where we've started that next kind of phase up. And that doesn't mean, that, again, thinking about price, it doesn't mean we go blow off pricing, the next year or whatever, all of a sudden it's 600,000 next year. It doesn't mean it can't, but it doesn't mean that that's what we're looking at. We're looking at what is being now with this interest and excitement today, what's being thought of and potentially being put into motion by people like Simon when back in the beginning, when Simon was doing his thing and he was like, man, let's pivot from this banking thing we were doing to this other thing now with Bitcoin and support this here. And, that enabled him to create that, which enabled him to them to invest in other companies, which we're creating and, that we see as everyday companies today. And so I think that is really where the real benefit of it is. We can trade it all day long, and that's fine. If you want to trade, you want to make some money trading, that's fine. But I think if you're doing that with Bitcoin and you're missing the bigger picture here, you're missing the things we talk about constantly. I think that, you're going to be the person kicking yourself 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, 30 years down the road, looking back at this and going, what the hell was I thinking? I had the opportunity there. Again, this is the once in a lifetime, once in a generation, once in a century, whatever you want to call it, kind of opportunities that I honestly never thought that I would get. I thought I would just deal with systems as they were and do it, and that would be fine. We'd make money, we'd do good. But when I came in, January 2017, that's what I started talking about. I was like, this is what it is. And I wasn't overly sold on Bitcoin at the time. I still saw it as something to trade, but I was smart enough to, kind of continue to accumulate it as well. But it's really been the last few years, from the previous cycle coming this one that I've really kind of gone all full in there and go, okay, you know what? It's more than just price. It really is this other stuff that's bigger and more important. Which will
Hey, listen, on that note, and then we'll wrap up here in about 8 minutes because I don't want to steal all y'all's time. I'm going to post something up that Fidelity put in print in 2021. Love your comments on this. See if I can share the screen here. Can you guys see this?
Yeah.
Awesome. Basically, I think this says in 2021, September, 2 years ago, Jurrien Timmer of Fidelity said, came up with an analysis. I know he's using a bunch of models that have some noise on them, but, he's talking about $1 billion for Bitcoin, each Bitcoin. Love your input on how crazy or how realistic that kind of prediction could be. Anybody?
Yeah, I'll
go ahead.
Go for it. So I do so there's these different models in Bitcoin. Like originally it was the stock to flow, and it basically says, based upon supply and demand economics, you end up by 2030 with like $1 million Bitcoin or so. And then more recently, like people talk about this like power law and various other things. And I think they're using these types of models here in trying to figure out what the price would be. What I think is most useful for that is recognizing that none of us have an effing clue where this is going to go.
Yeah.
In terms of what price. I got no idea. I do know in my map of the world that more and more people, more and more companies, more and more governments, more and more central banks, and every entity does need to break the cycle and will most likely want to demand Bitcoin, right? So then you're thinking about, well, do we really want to do these outrageous models? Well, I think they're useful. And the reason I think they're useful is just say, look, this model says that this is the possibility. And it's based upon sound principles. These aren't just silly principles. They're based upon logic and a way of doing it. And then that helps you tune your mind into actually, as long as I get more and more Bitcoin every single month, there's the sky in the pie upside. but it doesn't really need to do that for me to succeed. Because
Yeah.
if you just take a 10-year normal financial plan and apply not even anything like it reaching $1 billion, you'll realize that every single asset priced in Bitcoin has created this, it's so cheesy to say once in a lifetime, right? Because that was the words that you used, but we find ourselves using that, right?
Yeah.
I think I actually said once in a century.
Yeah, once in a century.
I think this is
we
a
got
once in a
three.
century
We got
event,
three
dude.
things, right? We got Bitcoin. We got the ability for all of us around the world to communicate with freedom of speech on X. So literally, I can meet Gary, I can meet Chris, and within seconds, I can have access to the greatest mind in every single subject, and we can all push back on each other with different experiences and different cultures, and accelerate our learning in seconds. Just put a few people on the right X space, and
Totally.
the rate at which your information is growing, that used to be like you had to be in an elite university, access to the right library, and even then, like trying to find the right book, and that's just that happens. And then we got the ability to have this crazy, scary one, but also incredible is this artificial intelligence thing. Like, put all of that together, we've got automation of monotonous tasks that is both an opportunity and a very scary prospect in the future. You've got Bitcoin hard money, and then you've got the ability for all of us to share this experience and transition and figure it all out together. That is the bullish case for the world that we live in today. And that's why I say, you said, when I think of the world, and I won't cover this, we'll cover it on a future one. I'd love to come back again. But when I think of the world, I think of, you've got proof of work. Everything I've shared today excites me, energizes me, gets me up in the morning, makes think there is a much better tomorrow. How the hell do we bring more people, inspire more people to join us in this world? In fact, we need to do better. We need to be better. We need to do more. We need to share more. We need to explain more, because the people that aren't on board of this, I'm really scared for them.
Yeah.
Because the other side is what I call proof of weapons. And proof of weapons, and I'm not going to go into this, but the fiat currency system and the central banking system is creating all of the problems in the world that are really scary. Wealth inequality, consolidation of wealth to the rich, excessive debt and homelessness from those on the wrong side, while paying 30% interest on credit cards, 50% interest on payday loans because they can't meet it, and defaulting on their debt, they end up in homeless, and therefore having to turn to drugs just to get through the night. That's the wrong side. And the other side of that, you've got Elon Musk, and all of these billionaires are going to be using Bitcoin. We need more of these people to break the cycle. That's the promise that we wanted. We know that they're all going to use it and they're all going to pump our bag, but we need to front run Wall Street. We need to front run the billionaires. I'm blessed. What Bitcoin gave me, I never imagined that it would happen in the time frame that it did. That's a gift from God, quite frankly.
I agree. Simon, I actually agree. Okay. I feel really blessed. I mean, when I say I would be terrified right now if I didn't have Bitcoin, I really mean it. I mean, I would be like, fuck hell, dude, I'm in trouble. Like, I have to play catch up here. And I think that's why we're all pressing people really hard. Hey, really look at this construct. A friend of mine called me that I've known since I was 28 years old. His son, who's 22, heard my name that he was using. And he said, Gary Cardone? And he said, yeah, I worked with a guy for like 10, 15 years. He's like, wow, I listen to the guy 3 days a week, man. He's the one that got me into Bitcoin. Well, now his dad's looking at his retirement program going, Gary, what do you know about Bitcoin? And he's moving his whole retirement program. Guess what he's doing? He's taking his IRA into Bitcoin. So many people that are scared of Bitcoin then do this bizarro thing. Okay. And I think we got to end here because I'm taking y'all's time and I've got to do some things. But like, he then said, I'm going to move 150 grand into the IRA. I'm like, bro, I thought you just said it was so risky. Yeah, but it's great returns, man. Isn't it interesting, right? That
Yeah.
like, I can't tell you how many people I've met in their 50s and 60s. They fight to get into Bitcoin. But when they roll over, the first piece they do is the piece that is there that's supposed to be the sacred retirement piece. And they don't even see what they're doing, though. I'm like, you understand, you just got through saying how volatile this was, how risky this was. And now your first allocation is in the very asset that you're sitting there wanting to protect. They really want to protect it from taxes. That's really the deal. When they really look at it, they're more scared over the tax implication than they are the volatility, I think. But even when you look at his portfolio, he said, I'm up 12%. I'm like, bro, you're going to be sick when you see what Bitcoin did in the last 6 years. Okay,
Yeah.
sick. Like his whole life would have changed, right? That 100 grand now would be with $2.5 million, man, for him. So like this thing, the last thing on that Fidelity report, 2018, had you invested $1, it'd be worth $4 million today. And they're basically, see, this is the piece that it's the hidden destruction of the value of the US dollar that people don't really understand. And this was the challenge for the 60-year-old. He's like, hey man, I need to understand Bitcoin. I said, the biggest problem with understanding Bitcoin is not the challenge. It's understanding the world you've been living in for 50 years is none of it's real, dude. It's all based on bad data, false. It's not actually real. You have to unlearn that to understand Bitcoin. That's the biggest challenge with Bitcoin. It's not understanding Bitcoin. It's understanding the Ponzi scheme you're in is literally like quicksand, 70, 80-year-old quicksand, man. It just, it makes you heavier and heavier. You can't move. You're not fluid. I think that's probably a really good analogy of all fiat systems. Actually, they just grind you down, never get really solid, but you never can really make much movement. Chris, makes sense to you?
Man, perfectly. Exactly. Again, I think the biggest failure in our, public education system is that we completely ignore, the realities of finance, the reality of assets, the reality of, what's going on with the fiat that we are, learning how to, get by working for somebody. I mean, we hear it said all the time, public schools are basically just there to teach us how to be employees. And that's why the really creative ones, most often, are the ones who do worst in school. The ones that go out there and end up creating things often were some of the worst students because they, it wasn't about being a student, right? I had to myself. I was a great student. I had no trouble with school at all. Always came very simply. I'd have homework done before I even left class. It was nothing for me. So
I would have hated you, man.
Well, thankfully, I had this great drive that I didn't want. You know my story. I didn't want to be told by somebody that had no clue. This is the way things have to do, and I have to listen just because they're above me.
Yeah, we all share that. We definitely all share that in common. All three of us.
But but I had to unlearn a lot of what school was teaching. The way you are taught to approach things. So I was fortunate that I was able to make my way out of that, and it hasn't been an easy road. Even as an adult, sometimes I still kind of fall back into that every once in a while. But I've got a 13-year-old son now, and every day, I push him to think beyond what the simple stuff is. Right? I homeschool him just so he's not indoctrinated in all the how to be an employee stuff. I'll be honest. I give him some of Grant's stuff. He's really soaking that up. He thinks it's so cool. That I talk to you.
Yeah.
But for me, it's for him to understand that the world is not as they try to teach you it is. Because I want him, whether he goes on to work for somebody or not, I just want him to understand the way the world really is. And I think if we can do that one by one, each of us out there with our kids, it'll take a while, but we can get that tide of change going, and maybe we contribute to that lack of where the wealth discrepancy isn't so huge, between the haves and the have-nots. A lot of that is just not knowing, right? I mean, that's what a lot of the government programs are for. Hey, listen, they're a minority, they're under exposed, they haven't been known. So here's their opportunity. Go on, but you can give the opportunity, but if they don't understand what to do with that, it's rarely going to help them.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I look at it, and I hope.
Yeah, I think the divide between the haves and the have-nots getting ready to get bigger, not more narrow. For me, I'm very interested in making sure I'm on the right side of that pendulum or that seesaw. Like, you don't want to be on the wrong side of this thing. Okay. Like, I cannot encourage you enough to look at this as a dynamic that will not change, dude, for 100 years. Once this seesaw readjusts, like, you're going to be stuck on that fucking edge. Like, you get to make a decision right now where you are on that thing. I would be looking at companies, businesses, and opportunities that make sure that I'm moving toward the super rich, because I think it's going to be a super rich and a super poor world. And I mean, I'm a little even hesitant to say it because it's like a nasty comment, but I am making my decision that I want to run in that direction. Like, I don't want to run in the other direction.
Yeah.
So you need to, like, at least point your face on the side of the freaking, side of this seesaw that you want to be on. There's 8 billion people, and I'm pretty sure that, I don't hear anybody in the 1% saying they want to be in the 90 down.
Yeah.
I've never heard anyone say that. Okay. Ever. Simon, you want to be in the low 25, 28% quartile? See, I don't think so. Nobody wants to be in that fucking place, man. It's a toilet, right?
Yeah.
And like, I actually would like to make so much money with Simon that we can then go pull those people out and give them something else. But, like, I have to make a lot of money first before I can make substantial change. There are going to be a lot of people that are crushed in this, man. Just absolutely crushed. Some will be big companies in this transition. So when I see a tsunami of change coming like this, I can dig in and hold on, knowing that I'm going to get ripped into pieces, or I can become really fluid and like a palm tree, that just moves in the wind, constantly just moves. You cannot fight this, okay? If you fight this, you are going to get slaughtered. It's just too much force. And I think this $1 billion, look, I think trying to value Bitcoin will be a fool's game.
Yeah.
Total fool's game, and no one's going to get it right. I don't care how many Stanford degrees you got. I don't care how many models you've done. It's going to blow every model out. Any human concoction should be destroyed by Bitcoin because it's mathematical. It's just math. And we have never let math work. We always interfere with shit. I mean, look what we're doing right now. Oh, we're going to control the atmosphere. Like, bro, I'm pretty sure that us putting a bunch of particles up in the air is like, anyway, you can only mess with nature so many times before it comes back to bite you. That I'm sure of. Simon, any closing comments, my friend? Thank you so much to both of you guys for being here and adding great value. Haven't even had time to go through the comments, but really appreciate everybody being here. They love you guys, by the way. They like me, but they love you guys.
Yeah, you put us three in the room and you ain't going to stop until Gary said, right, we've got to stop, man, because we're just so passionate about this topic. And
well, that's good. You show me this much intellectual capital and passion that goes into a market, I guarantee you there's going to be a market.
Yeah.
No
and we've all got our quirky politics and stuff, and we hang out on spaces and it comes out and we push back on each other. But the interesting thing in what Gary says as well is before you probably had to figure out, how to quit your job and build a business. That's not for everyone. Like, that's a massive risk. Like, it's really risky.
Really
so the beauty
risky.
of putting savings back in the world is that work as hard as you can, earn as much as you can in your job, whatever your skill set is now. Figure out how to cut back as much as you can and save the rest in Bitcoin. Celebrate when the price goes down, because it means that your earning bought you more Bitcoin that month. And then enjoy the price going up, because your net worth's going up. So what could be better than that? Do that for 4 years. Do that for 2 cycles. The next 8 years. You probably don't need to create a business, risk it all, be the 10% that's still in business after 10 years, and then the 10% of the 10% that is still in business after 7 years, and then the less than 1% that becomes a Michael Dell or whatever. You know, that's open to everybody. Look, if your passion is to do that, go break your heart out, do that. The entrepreneurial spirit still needs to exist. We need people to create shit. And if it's you, it's you. But if it's not you, just hustle at your job and save in Bitcoin. And here's the thing. We spent a lot of time on Spaces, and we're going to close this off right now. But Chris, Gary, the most rewarding thing, and you've seen it on Spaces, and you're going to get this more and more and more, is when someone comes up and says, "Hey, Simon, I saw that video that you created, and I got it. I got it." There is nothing more rewarding than the human experience of you being able to get someone to get Bitcoin, and then they do it and it changes their life. I'm the most rewarding thing in the world to me is every time I exit the street, I meet someone that says, "I got Bitcoin because of you, Simon." And every space that I go to, they'll be like, "Yeah, Simon, I really disagree on your politics here, but thank you for sharing that way that got me into Bitcoin." And you guys are going to have that for the next, and it's the most rewarding thing. You probably already got it, but wait till it really makes a difference to people over the years ahead. And everyone should give that gift to somebody in the world. Like Gary always ends his spaces, said, do something nice for someone, and don't tell anyone about it. Get as many people as you can into Bitcoin.
Isn't that a cool life hack, dude? Like, it's so simple. That little life hack. Let's go ahead and end there. I think why don't one of you guys tell them what they have to do today? I like this idea, man. If everybody did this every day, dude, imagine how wonderful the world would be. Just being nice to somebody anonymously. Like, it's like, it should be a goal that someone does every day. It makes you a nicer person, right? Really does. So can somebody close with the what all these people have to do today? All 2,612 people? Anybody?
Own more Bitcoin this month than you did previous month, and do it.
I love that one. I love that one. And make sure that you do something nice for somebody today. Okay. And you can't take credit for it. Chris, thank you so much for helping me. I really appreciate your energy. Simon, same with you, dude. Really appreciate it. I just took a flyer this morning. Neither one of you guys are going to be in Nashville, but we'll make sure that we say hello to you while we're there. I'm excited about going. There's so much political stuff going on there. I mean, the politicians going there, dude. Like, I've had to change my whole schedule around. I was going to go do the round table thing with a bunch of miners and 30 minutes with Trump, but I think I'm going to move to where there must be 10 politicians there sitting in a room with 100 Bitcoiners, Trump and others. So that's for me, that's the highlight of the deal. Shake Mr. Trump's hand and tell him that I'm ready for work, dude. I'm ready for duty, and I don't charge anything to my government. But that's really exciting, and to meet some of the big whales and some of the people that have been around a long time, like Simon. And Simon, if you have any people that going that I should meet, please introduce them. Great show today. Really enjoyed it. We didn't really talk about price, and I'm actually glad.
It's good.
Like, Chris, I get so tired of people. Hey, it's moved to $800. I'm like, who gives a fuck, dude? Like, my hair grew too. Okay, I probably need to go get a haircut. I would do better getting a haircut than talking about $800 move on Bitcoin.
Yeah. But again,
I don't even care about the ETF. We'll be the only show that didn't talk about the launch of the Ethereum ETF today, and I think that's good.
Yeah. No, and I think that's just. I think the way we do that is we just continue to focus on, what Bitcoin really means. Again,
What does it mean to you in one word?
Freedom.
Yeah, freedom. Yeah.
Yeah. Any other words from you,
Yeah,
Chris?
just if you think about it long term, I think there's a big, significant move toward peace. I think.
Well, see, I think it's just pure, unadulterated power. That would be my term for it. But I love all three of these. Freedom, but I think it's just pure power, man. Fucking
Freedom, power, peace.
battery that exactly. It's awesome.
it's good
All right,
stuff.
guys. Thank you so much. I could talk to you guys all day. I love you guys. Appreciate your energy, your power, and I know both of you are going to do something spectacular for 2 people out there. So thank you very much, guys.
Thanks a lot, Gary. Take care, Simon.
Cheers.